My name is Marin Ellis. I'm 29. And the first thing I learned after losing my job was that being broke makes some people treat you like you stopped being human. I was laid off on a Tuesday morning, the kind of meeting where they smile too softly, thank you for your hard work, and hand you a severance packet like paper can catch a person before she hits the ground. I went home and did what responsible adults do when their life suddenly cracks open. I checked my bank account, updated my resume, made coffee I barely drank, and told myself I had a few weeks to figure things out. I did not even get 2 days. My landlord called Thursday afternoon and said someone had offered him $1,000 to get me out early. Not at the end of the month. Not after a proper conversation. Early, fast, and preferably before I had time to think. At first I thought I had heard him wrong. Then he said it was my brother. When I called him, he did not deny it. He laughed like I was finally becoming the joke he had been waiting to tell. He said, "You needed this to grow up." My dad did not sound shocked either. He said, "You had to hit bottom before I'd change." My mom's voice was even colder. She said, sleeping on the street might finally wake me up. That was the moment something inside me went completely still. I did not beg. I did not scream. I did not give them another sentence to twist later. I hung up, opened my contacts, and made one phone call to someone my family had spent years hoping I would never need again. Less than a minute later, my dad was calling nonstop. My mom sent one message that only said, "Please," and my brother, the one who had laughed, suddenly stopped laughing. Before I tell you what happened after that, tell me what the weather is like where you are right now. Does it match your mood today? By the time I walked back into my apartment building, my hands were still shaking from the calls I had refused to answer. I told myself to stay practical. Get inside, pack the essentials, keep quiet, and let Jordan Pike handle whatever came next. The hallway smelled like old carpet and laundry detergent, completely normal, which made everything feel even stranger. I reached my door, put my key in the lock, and it would not turn. I tried again slower, then once more with both hands, like panic had made me forget how keys worked. But the lock had been changed. My name was still on the mailbox downstairs. My rent history was still in my email. My life was still on the other side of that door. But the door had already decided I was gone. I called my landlord, Owen Rusk, and asked why my key did not work. He answered too fast, like he had been waiting. He said he had to protect the unit during turnover. Turnover. That was the word he used for my bedroom, my clothes, my medicine, my files, and every small thing I had built while living there. I told him I had not signed anything. He said he knew that. I told him I had not surrendered the unit. He said my belongings were accessible. That was when I looked down the hallway and saw the first box, then the second. Then the black trash bags, the laundry basket, the plastic bin with the cracked lid, and my shoe rack leaning sideways like someone had kicked it. My things were stacked along the wall near the service exit. A few had been dragged close enough to the breezeway that rain from the night before had reached them. I did not scream. I turned on my phone camera and started recording. I filmed the new lock, my key failing, the hallway, the boxes, the torn bag with my sweaters spilling out, and the damp folder with my old tax forms curled at the edges. Then, I saw the broken picture frame at the bottom of one box. It was the only framed photo I had of my grandmother Ruth and me at her kitchen table, both of us laughing because she had burned toast and blamed the toaster. The glass was cracked straight through her face. Owen kept talking through the phone, using words like liability and difficult circumstances. I asked if my brother had paid him $1,000. He hesitated. Then he said my brother had offered money to make the move out happen quickly, and that he had accepted it as compensation for the inconvenience. I repeated, "So you took money from my brother to force me out early after I lost my job?" Owen said I was making it sound worse than it was. I told him I was recording because my property had been removed without proper notice. His tone changed immediately. Suddenly he wanted to be reasonable. Suddenly he was sorry if I felt blindsided. I ended the call before I said anything emotional, because emotion was what people like that waited for. I put the phone in my pocket and started sorting my life on the hallway floor. Documents first. Passport, birth certificate, social security card, tax forms, even the wet ones. Laptop next. Chargers, medicine, 2 clean shirts, 1 pair of jeans. My work shoes, because some desperate part of me still believed I could interview my way out of this before anyone noticed I had nowhere to sleep. A neighbor opened her door, saw me crouched there, and slowly closed it again. I found the folder from my grandmother's estate under a pile of damp mail. I almost left it, but something made me slide it into my bag. Maybe instinct. Maybe Ruth. Maybe the part of me that knew my family had always counted on me being too tired, too guilty, or too polite to use what was already mine. My brother texted while I was loading the first round into my car. "Stop being dramatic. You will thank us later." I screenshotted it. Then another message came in. "You needed a push." I screenshotted that too. My father called 3 times. My mother left 1 voicemail saying she hoped I would not punish everyone over a hard lesson. A hard lesson. That was what they called it when they were not the ones standing in a hallway beside wet boxes, deciding which parts of their life were light enough to carry. By the time I loaded what I could fit into my trunk and back seat, my arms hurt, my hair was damp, and my apartment door still stood there with its new lock, clean and smug, like nothing cruel had happened in front of it. I looked at the boxes I could not take and told myself I would come back. I did not know if that was true. I just needed 1 sentence that did not sound like defeat. That night, my car became the closest thing I had to a home, which sounds simple until you actually try to sleep in one. I parked in a Meyer lot on the edge of Hilliard because it was big, bright, and busy enough that I thought no one would notice one exhausted woman sitting behind the wheel with half her life packed around her. I reclined the seat as far as it would go, which was not far because boxes blocked it. My coat was somewhere in the trunk, but I was too tired to unload everything just to find it, so I wrapped a hoodie around my shoulders and locked the doors twice. Every sound felt personal. A cart rattling across the pavement, a truck engine starting, someone laughing near the entrance. Headlights swept over my windshield again and again, and each time my body tightened like I was about to be caught doing something wrong. My brother had paid to push me out. My landlord had changed my lock. My parents had refused shelter. But somehow I was the one sitting there feeling guilty for existing in public after midnight. I slept in pieces. 10 minutes here, 20 there. By morning, my neck hurt, my mouth tasted like stale coffee, and my phone was at 11%. I checked my bank account even though I knew the number, because panic makes you repeat math as if the answer might get kinder. It did not. I went inside to use the restroom, washed my face, combed my hair with my fingers, and practiced a normal expression in the mirror. I was gone less than 10 minutes. When I came back outside, my car was not there. At first, my mind refused to understand it. I walked to the row where I had parked, then the next row, then back again. I clicked my key fob even though I was too far away for it to matter. Nothing beeped. Nothing flashed. My car, my clothes, my documents, my laptop, everything I had managed to rescue from the hallway, was gone. Then I saw the small sign near the edge of the lot. Overnight parking restricted. Unauthorized vehicles subject to towing at owner's expense. Owner's expense. Those words almost felt funny in the worst possible way. I called the number on the sign, and a bored man confirmed my car had been towed at 6:12 in the morning. The release fee was more than I had available, and storage fees would start adding up by the day. He said it like he was reading a lunch menu. I asked if I could at least get my medicine from the vehicle. He said there were procedures. I asked what I was supposed to do if I did not have the money. He said I would need to figure that out. Everyone had advice that week, and none of it included help. I stood in the parking lot while shoppers moved around me with carts and weekend plans. I wanted to call my family, not because I believed they would help, but because some childish part of you still reaches for the people who taught you their names before they taught you pain. I did not call. Instead, I started walking. I ended up at a Panera near the public library, the kind of place where nobody bothers you if you buy the cheapest coffee and look busy. I plugged my phone into an outlet and watched the battery climb 1% at a time. I opened my resume and tried to edit bullet points while wearing yesterday's clothes and pretending my car was not locked behind a gate across town. Then the family group chat lit up. I should not have opened it, but I did. My mother had posted a photo of brunch. My father replied with a thumbs up and something about needing a peaceful weekend. My brother posted a picture from a property showing with a caption that said, "Adult life rewards people who make hard decisions." I stared at that sentence until the words blurred. No one asked where I had slept. No one asked if I had eaten. No one asked whether I had my medication or my car. They were not worried about me. They were waiting for the lesson to work. That was when sadness turned into something colder, not rage, recognition. I opened the damp folder from my grandmother's estate, the one I had shoved into my bag in the hallway. Some pages were wrinkled, but the words were still readable. My name was there. Marin Ellis. The property address in Worthington was there too. The house my parents lived in. The house my brother used like a second office whenever he wanted to impress clients. The house everyone treated as my parents' home because I had never forced them to say out loud that it was not. I remembered my grandmother Ruth squeezing my hand during one of her last good days and saying, "Do not let them make you feel guilty for what I chose." Sitting in that Panera with $12 in my checking account and no car, I finally understood exactly what she meant. My grandmother Ruth was not a dramatic woman, but she understood people better than anyone in our family wanted to admit. When she got sick, everyone became busy in ways that sounded respectable. My father had contracts to manage. My mother had school events and donor meetings. My brother had deals, investors, emergencies, and whatever else made him sound important when he did not want to show up. I was the one who came after work with soup. I was the one who learned which pharmacy had her medication ready on time. I was the one who slept on the couch when she was afraid of falling at night. I did not do it for a reward. I did it because she was my grandmother and because the house felt too quiet when she was alone. Near the end, she had Jordan Pike come over twice. My father called it unnecessary. My mother said it was morbid. My brother joked that Ruth was probably leaving everything to her church. Ruth ignored all of them. After she passed, the will was clear. The house in Worthington went to me, not to my father, not to the family collectively. To me. My parents were allowed to stay because I allowed it. At first, I told myself it was kindness. They were grieving. The market was rough. Moving would be stressful. They promised it would only be temporary. Temporary turned into years. They repainted without asking me. They used the address from my father's HVAC contracting business. My mother hosted school donors in the dining room and accepted compliments on her beautiful home. My brother stored investor packets in the garage and brought people by when he needed to look more established than he was. I stayed quiet because every time I thought about raising the issue, I heard my mother's voice asking why I would do this to my family. That is how control works when it has been installed early enough. Other people do not have to be in the room anymore. Their guilt lives inside you and speaks for them. But sitting at that Panera table, watching my phone charge while my car sat in impound, I realized something that made my hands stop shaking. They had used my silence as shelter, then tried to take shelter away from me. I called Jordan Pike. His assistant answered first, and when I gave my name, her tone changed. She remembered the estate. Jordan came on the line a minute later. I kept my voice low because people were eating lunch nearby, and I did not want my life spilling over their tables. I told him I had lost my job. I told him my brother had paid my landlord $1,000 to force me out early. I told him my lock had been changed, my belongings had been put in the hallway, and my car had been towed with most of my rescued property inside it. Then I asked the question I should have asked years earlier. What are my options regarding the Worthington house? He did not sound surprised. That hurt and comforted me at the same time. He asked if my parents had a lease. I said no. He asked if they paid rent. I said no, not officially, not in any way that made sense on paper. He asked if I had given them written ownership rights. I said no. He asked whether my father was still using the address for business purposes. I said yes. Jordan paused, and I could hear him typing. Then he said the sentence that changed the air around me. Marin, that house is yours. It has been yours since probate closed. They are there because you permitted it, not because they own it. I closed my eyes. For years, that fact had felt rude to think about. Now it felt like oxygen. Jordan explained the process. Proper written notice, documentation, no threats, no emotional arguments. If they resisted, there were legal steps. If my father was using the property address for business filings or credit purposes without my consent, that could be addressed too. Then I told him about the renovation credit line, the one my father and brother had pushed me to co-sign when I was younger and desperate to be seen as cooperative. $52,000, with my name sitting on it like a trap. Jordan's voice became firmer. He asked me to send everything I had: texts, statements, documents, photos. I emailed him the wet boxes, the changed lock, the texts from my brother, the voicemail transcript from my mother, the landlord messages, and the credit line paperwork. Jordan said he would contact my family formally and immediately. I hung up and stared at my phone. Less than a minute later, my father's name filled the screen. Then again. Then again. My mother texted, "Please call us before you do something we cannot undo." My brother called twice, then sent, "What did you tell that lawyer?" I did not answer. For the first time in 2 days, their panic was louder than mine. They found me that afternoon at the mall food court, not because they cared where I had slept, but because they knew my habits. When I needed Wi-Fi, outlets, and somewhere no one asked questions, I went to public places where I could blend in. I was sitting near a closed smoothie stand with my phone plugged into the wall and a half-eaten pretzel in front of me when I saw my father first. Grant Ellis walked in fast, scanning faces like he was looking for a problem to solve by force. My mother, Celeste, followed behind him, eyes red, one hand pressed to her chest like she was already preparing to be the injured party. My brother Kellen came last. That was how I knew things were worse for them than they wanted me to see. Kellen usually entered rooms like he owned them. That day, he looked around before he moved, like he expected someone to recognize him for the wrong reason. My father reached the table and said we needed to talk outside. I said no. He looked offended, as if privacy was something I owed him after he helped turn my life into a public humiliation. He leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Marin, do not make a scene." I looked at him, then at my mother, then at my brother. I said, "You already made one. You just did it where you thought nobody important would see." My mother whispered that I was being cruel. I almost laughed, but I did not. Cruel was a word they saved for my reaction, never their behavior. Kellen sat across from me without asking and said I needed to calm down. He said the $1,000 was not a bribe. It was motivation. He said everybody had been worried I was getting too comfortable. I asked him if making me homeless after a layoff was his idea of motivation or just entertainment. His jaw tightened. My father cut in and said they had been trying to wake me up before my life went nowhere. That was when I realized they had rehearsed this. They had probably talked in the car about staying united, about holding the line, about not letting me manipulate them with tears. The problem was, I was done crying in front of people who used tears as evidence. I placed my phone on the table, screen down, not recording, not threatening, just reminding them that I could. Then I said what I wanted. First, my car was getting out of impound that day, and they were paying the release and storage fees because their actions were why my belongings were in that trunk. Second, Kellen was reimbursing me for damaged property, including the documents, clothing, and the framed photo of Ruth. Third, all communication about the Worthington house would go through Jordan Pike. My parents would begin making arrangements to leave because permission to live there had ended. My mother made a sound like I had slapped her. My father went completely still. Kellen looked from me to them, and for the first time his arrogance slipped. I continued. Fourth, my name was coming off the $52,000 renovation credit line. Refinance it, pay it, restructure it. I do not care. But I am done carrying risk for people who think sleeping in a car is a character-building exercise. My father's hand trembled on the table. He curled it into a fist when he saw me notice. He said banks did not move that fast. I said landlords apparently do when Kellen offers cash, so maybe he could bring that same energy. Kellen's face went red. My mother started crying harder and said I was destroying the family over a misunderstanding. I asked what part was misunderstood. The part where my brother paid my landlord. The part where Dad told me I needed to hit bottom. Or the part where you said sleeping on the street might wake me up. She had no answer. She only looked around to see if anyone had heard. That told me everything. She was not ashamed because I had been hurt. She was ashamed because someone might know. My father tried to switch strategies. He said they could help me find a new job. My mother said I could come to dinner and we could reset. Kellen said he would talk to Owen and smooth things over. I said no. No to dinner. No to private talks. No to promises that appeared only after consequences showed up. Then Kellen leaned forward and asked the question he had been avoiding. Do you really think you can kick Mom and Dad out of that house? I looked at him for a long second. Then I said, I do not think anything. I own it. My father looked down. My mother covered her mouth. Kellen's confidence broke into calculation, and I watched him realize what I had realized at Panera. They had pushed me to the bottom without checking what I was standing on. I picked up my bag, unplugged my phone, and stood. My father said my name in the voice he used when he expected obedience by reflex. For a second, my body remembered being afraid of that voice. Then I remembered the hallway, the wet boxes, the missing car, and my grandmother's cracked photograph. I said, You wanted me to grow up. This is me grown. Then I walked away before they could turn the conversation into another cage. For the next week, my phone became a museum of panic. My father called in bursts, always from slightly different angles. First angry, then disappointed, then practical, then almost gentle. My mother left long voicemails full of soft words that fell apart the second you listened closely. She said healing, she said family, she said grace. But under every sentence was the same demand. Stop the paperwork, give us back control, and let us decide what this meant. Kellen texted like a man trying every key on a locked door. One message said I was overreacting. The next said he never meant for things to go that far. Then he said Owen had misunderstood him. Then he said if his deal collapsed, that would be on me. I sent every message to Jordan and replied to none. Jordan told me not to argue with people who were building their own record. Let them talk, he said. People often confess when they think they are explaining. He was right. Owen Rusk was the first one to get scared enough to change his tone. Once Jordan sent a formal letter about the lock change, the removal of my property, and the third-party payment, Owen suddenly discovered compassion. He emailed that he regretted the confusion and wanted an amicable resolution. Confusion was another word people used when they hoped consequences could be negotiated down to a misunderstanding. Jordan asked for the return of my deposit, reimbursement for damaged property, and written confirmation that Owen would not claim unpaid rent or penalties against me. Owen agreed faster than I expected. That told me he knew how bad it looked. Kellen's situation got worse. The property deal he had been bragging about involved investors, a brokerage mentor, and a lender who cared very much about whether he had bribed a landlord to pressure an unemployed tenant out of housing. Victor Lane, his investment partner, emailed Jordan with professional concern, but the meaning was obvious. Could this be settled quietly before reputational damage spread? Jordan replied that any settlement needed to address my losses, my credit exposure, and my removal from the renovation credit line. After that, Kellen stopped texting jokes. My father asked to meet alone. I refused. He asked again. I said all meetings would include Jordan or happen in public. We met at a diner near a busy intersection, Jordan on speaker beside me. My father came with a folder and the expression of a man who had spent his life believing paperwork was something he used on other people. He said the credit line could not be changed overnight. Jordan said no one had asked for overnight, only a binding plan. My father said the HVAC business could be harmed if the Worthington address became an issue. Jordan said my property could not be used as a business convenience without my permission. My father said my mother was devastated. I said nothing. Then Kellen showed up, even though he had not been invited. He walked in looking tired, angry, and smaller than I remembered. He said I was humiliating him. I asked if that felt familiar. He told me I was going to ruin his future over one mistake. Jordan calmly asked if he meant the payment to Owen, the texts admitting he wanted me forced out, or the credit line pressure from years earlier. Kellen stopped talking. That was the first time I saw him understand that charm did not work on documents. My mother tried one last emotional meeting 2 days later. She came to the public library because she knew I had been using the computers there for job applications. She sat across from me with puffy eyes and said she missed her daughter. Not that she was sorry. Not that she had been wrong. She missed the version of me who answered calls, softened hard truths, and accepted apologies that had no repair attached. She said if I dropped the notice, we could rebuild. I asked her what rebuilding looked like. She said Sunday dinners, support, family therapy someday, maybe help with job leads. I said, so I give up leverage first and then you decide whether to treat me humanely. She looked hurt because I had translated her offer accurately. After that, things moved through lawyers. The settlement came in pieces. Owen paid back my deposit and damages for the lockout mess. My family agreed to cover the impound release, storage fees, replacement of damaged essentials, and part of my attorney fees. The bigger fight was the $52,000 credit line. Jordan pushed hard. The lender was already uncomfortable. Victor did not want his name near a family coercion dispute. Kellen's brokerage mentor wanted the matter resolved before anyone filed a formal ethics complaint. In the end, they found money, because people always find money faster when their own comfort is at risk. My father refinanced part of it through the business. Kellen liquidated a small investment account he had bragged about for years. The written agreement removed my name from the credit line and paid me a $38,000 settlement for credit exposure, damages, emergency costs, and release of claims tied to the dispute. When the money hit my account, I did not feel rich. I felt less trapped. I went straight to the impound lot, paid the balance, and waited while a man behind thick glass acted annoyed that I had interrupted his day. When they brought my car out, I stood there with my hand on the hood. It was dusty, crowded, and smelled like damp cardboard, but it was mine. I opened the trunk and saw my bags still there. My laptop bag, my documents, the folder with Ruth's estate papers, the cracked photograph. I touched the frame and finally cried, not because I had lost, but because I had not. Not completely. Not the way they planned. That night, I paid for a cheap motel with a real bed and a door that locked from the inside. I slept for 11 hours. When I woke up, there were 17 missed calls from my family and 1 email from Jordan. The notice deadline for the Worthington house was still moving. No extensions, no private deals, no more lessons at my expense. My parents moved out of the Worthington house on a gray Saturday morning, the kind of morning my grandmother would have called honest because it did not pretend to be prettier than it was. I did not go inside while they packed. I sat in my car across the street with Jordan's paralegal and watched movers carry out furniture my parents had arranged like proof they belonged there. My mother cried on the porch. My father argued with one of the movers about a scratch table. Kellen arrived late, stayed on his phone, and avoided looking toward my car. There was no movie scene apology. No moment where my father crossed the lawn and admitted he had confused control with love. No moment where my mother said she should never have talked about me sleeping on the street. No moment where my brother said the $1,000 had been cruel. They left the way people like that often leave, angry that consequences had arrived, and offended that I was not carrying them. Once the house was empty, I walked through the front door with a locksmith behind me. The air smelled like furniture polish and cardboard dust. My mother had taken the curtains from the living room, even though they had been there before she moved in. My father had left old business mail in the kitchen. Kellen had forgotten a box of glossy property flyers in the garage, all of them promising smart investments and secure futures. I threw them away. Then I changed the locks, changed the garage code, set up cameras, and filed mail forwarding notices. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. I reviewed every account with my name on it. I ordered replacement documents for the ones damaged in the hallway. I opened a separate savings account and named it Emergency Fund because I never wanted survival to depend on anyone's mood again. A week later, I started a new job as a compliance coordinator for a small clinic network outside Columbus. It paid less than my old position, but the manager looked me in the eye during the interview and spoke to me like a person, not a broken machine being evaluated for parts. I bought a mattress first, then a table, then blackout curtains because sleeping in a safe room after weeks of fear is harder than people think. The quiet felt strange at first. I was used to calls, accusations, explanations, and the constant pressure of being someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's backup plan. In that house, the silence did not demand anything from me. It just let me breathe. My mother sent one final text before I blocked her number. Was it worth losing us? I read it 3 times. The old version of me would have written paragraphs. She would have explained pain carefully, softened every edge, and made sure no one felt too guilty for what they had done. The woman standing in that kitchen did not do that. I deleted the message. Then I blocked her, my father, and Kellen. Jordan remained the only channel for anything necessary. Kellen's deal never recovered. His brokerage did not fire him publicly, but he was suspended from client-facing work, and Victor Lane walked away from their investment plan. My father's business survived, but it got smaller. Losing the Worthington address embarrassed him more than he admitted, and refinancing the credit line hurt his cash flow. My mother had to move into a 2-bedroom apartment and explain to her private school friends that they were downsizing. I heard from a cousin that she called it a season of transition. That sounded like her. Rename the wound and hope nobody asks who made it. As for me, I did not become fearless. That is not how stories like this really end. I still checked the locks twice at night. I still flinched when unknown numbers called. I still felt grief in strange places, like the cereal aisle or the room that used to be Ruth's. But grief is not the same as regret. I did not regret protecting myself. I did not regret using the paperwork my grandmother left me. I did not regret learning that love without respect is just control wearing a family name. Here is what I want anyone listening to understand. Tough love is not an excuse to make someone unsafe. A lesson that requires humiliation, homelessness, or fear is not love. It is power. If people only call you family when they need access to your money, your signature, your silence, or your forgiveness, then they are not protecting a relationship. They are protecting a supply line. Learn what is in your name. Read every document before you sign it. Keep copies of your lease, loan papers, title records, medical documents, and anything that proves what belongs to you. Save texts. Take photos. Write dates down while your memory is fresh. Build an emergency fund, even if it starts with $5, because freedom often begins as a very small number in an account nobody else can touch. Boundaries do not destroy healthy families. Boundaries reveal unhealthy ones. My grandmother once told me not to let them make me feel guilty for what she chose. I think she knew I would need that sentence one day. Maybe not exactly this way. Not with a bribed landlord, a towed car, and my own family waiting for me to break. But she knew. She knew kindness without self-protection becomes a door other people keep walking through. So I closed the door. I locked it. And for the first time in my life, I kept the key. If you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity, tell me what finally made you set that boundary. And subscribe for more stories where silence ends, truth answers back, and the people who thought you had nothing left learn they were wrong.